Over the last few years, I've covered many sales and discounts for many Nintendo Switch games, especially ones from the Nintendo Switch eShop. For today though, I wanted to put out a video in my eShop series that is a little bit different. A video that covers fun Switch games that you could always get for a cheap price. These are games I've dubbed as forever cheap games. Games that are marked at MSRP price of about $5 or less, but also games that are very much worth playing. So if you're looking to beef up your digital library, but also looking to not break the bank either, then I got you covered with today's video. Lunistice is a game that is inspired by platformers from the 5th generation of consoles, otherwise known as the 32-bit era or the 64-bit era when you consider the N64. It's a retro-esque style platformer with graphics that at first glance look like they were ripped from a PS1 or a Sega Saturn game. Unlike many platformers from that era, the frame rate here is smooth and consistent, and the actual gameplay and controls are incredibly tight and spot on. Pretty much, Lunistice controls like a dream. Now as for the gameplay, the goal for this game is simple. You need to explore the levels while trying to find the exit as fast as you can, but you also have some extra goals, like finding secrets and all the collectibles within them. The levels themselves are top-notch, they're very well designed, with a lot of fun sequences based around momentum, and there is plenty of nooks and crannies within them to explore. This is a fantastic little indie platformer, a hidden gem no doubt, and absolutely worth every cent and then some at $4.99. Make sure to check this one out, it's great. Dodo takes inspiration from early 80s classics like Donkey Kong and Popeye, and it feels like a lost game that came from that era. In this game, you take control of a baker named Billy Beans as he tries to collect the donuts while trying to avoid Donut Dodo's attacks and his minions. After collecting all the smaller donuts on the stage, you gotta collect the big donut to complete it. I like how each board feels different from each other, and each one includes a few different gimmicks to help spice things up. Just like the arcade games of old, it ends up being a pretty addictive experience as you try to master the stages and chase after a high score. I had a lot of fun with this one, I highly recommend it, it's pretty good for $5. Murtop is an arcade-inspired game from the same publisher of Donut Dodo. This time the core gameplay is inspired by Dig Dug. This game you play as a rabbit who digs through dirt to collect those juicy carrots while also trying to save the world from an invasion of moles. And she does so by pooping out bombs. It's a lot of fun to play, it's a very fast-paced game with 256 stages to tackle, as well as bonus stages to take on. If you love the arcade game Dig Dug, then you'll probably get a kick out of this one. It's pretty good for $4.99. One of the better twin-stick shooters ever made was a game called Geometry Wars. It was a game that first appeared in an Xbox game called Project Gotham Racing 2. You most probably remember it from its updated release on the old Xbox 360 Xbox Live Arcade service. That game and its sequels were a blast to play back then, but for some reason or another, we haven't seen another game in the series for a very long time. Luckily, there is a spiritual successor of sorts in a game called Debris Infinity, which is very much inspired by the Geometry Wars games in both looks and gameplay. The game is just as chaotic as those games, with a similar visual style to boot that really pops on an OLED screen if you have one of those switches. There's 3 single-player modes to blast through: Time Attack, Power Wave, and Survival. There's also local multiplayer included too, with both co-op and versus modes to enjoy. It's a fun little game, I highly recommend it, since it's pretty cheap too. It's just $5 on the eShop. The Toree games are bite-sized platformers that at first you might think, wait, 99 cents? They gotta be garbage or something. But trust me, these games are very fun to play. In each game, the goal is simple. You need to race through each level as fast as you can. Often there's additional goals, like trying to collect all the stars in each level. The gameplay is easy to understand. You control with the left stick, move the camera with the right stick, or with the LB or RB buttons, and then you have a jump button. While the controls make it easy for new players to jump right on in, for those who want to achieve an S rank in each level, you are really going to need to have some excellent platforming skills. Now let me tell you, those S ranks are not easy to get. It can be pretty challenging. Between those ranks, collecting the collectibles, while also trying to unlock the secret characters, there is a nice amount of replayability to be had for just about $1 per game. The first game, Toree 3D, is great, I recommend starting with that one, and the sequel, Toree 2, is good too, with an even bigger emphasis on momentum-based play. Toree's Panic Pack is the latest release on Switch, and this is more of a collection, as it technically has 3 games included. Toree's Genesis includes 3 levels, inspired by the Sonic Adventure series, while Toree Jumble Jam 2 has 4 more levels. This time the levels have a bit more of an exploration focus to them, as opposed to just simply speeding along. Finally, Toree's Panic Pack includes Toree's Missions, which is a game that is kind of like the series' take on Metal Gear Solid VR missions. In each of the levels, you're tasked with completing a mission, such as racing to the end as fast as you can, collecting all the stars within a level, or defeating all the enemies within a level. And there's a bunch of different challenges here, with varying degrees of difficulty. While smaller in scope compared to the first game, Demon Turf Neon Splash ends up being a bit better because it mainly focuses on the best parts from the first game. The platforming is all based around momentum and speed, with no major stoppage or combat to worry about, which in a lot of ways it's a bit similar to the Toree games I just previously talked about. The platforming is tight and fun, and the levels are well designed. Speaking of the levels, there's 10 included, with additional goals in each level to complete, and the ability to unlock remixed versions of each level for extra challenge. For $4.99, I think it's worth it. It won't compete with the much bigger platforming experiences on the Switch, but with the time that you have with it, it'll be a sweet experience nonetheless. Downwell is an arcade-style, vertical scrolling shooter game, where players play as a man named Wotaro, who decides one night to explore a well nearby him. Apparently he knows monsters are within the well, so he straps on some gun boots and proceeds downward into the well. Questionable decisions by Wotaro and a ridiculous concept aside, the game is fun as you traverse through the randomly generated well. The gameplay is simple enough. You can move left or right, and jump of course, and if you hold down the jump button, you can fire bullets from your feet. You can also jump and stomp onto enemies. As you progress through the game, enemies can and will get tougher, and some can only be defeated by certain means, or have to be avoided entirely, so you have to react appropriately to these threats. At times players may find time voids, which are areas that stop everything within, and you might discover caves that provide a large amount of gems or weapons, as well as upgrades that can help you on your journey. The game is pretty simple in concept, but it becomes pretty challenging, yet highly addictive as you attempt to get further down the well. It's also incredibly cheap to get. The regular MSRP price on Switch is just $2.99. One of the more inexpensive ways that I've found to enjoy a bunch of classic arcade games on Switch is through Capcom's Arcade Stadium series. You can purchase all the games in each app at once for a lump sum, but if you're like me, and you only care about a few games in the collection, or you don't want to double dip on some because you already have it through other means on the Switch, then what you can do is actually buy the games you want individually, and they're only about $1.99 each if you go that route. Now, there's some pretty awesome games to be had in these collections, like the Street Fighter games, the Darkstalker games, and classics like Strider, Final Fight, and Ghouls and Ghosts. But there's some other incredible gems beyond those classics in each of the catalogs that are a steal to get for just $2. For example, there's 3 Wonders, which has 3 arcade games in one, a shoot 'em up, a run-and-gun game, and a puzzle game. Also there's Mega Twins, a sweet side-scrolling platformer. And then there's a Cave-developed shoot 'em up game called Pro Gear that's never been released on consoles before. Finally, some more gems are the Mega Man arcade games. I truly love them, they're very, very fun. The apps themselves also come with a free game. They are free to download, and they give you a good taste of how the emulation is, and what you can customize in the games, the difficulty, the looks, and even the cabinet and such, before you go about buying any of the games. Death's Hangover takes the tried and true ball and bat gameplay mechanics, and combines it with a game that has a lot of humor and a ridiculous premise. The story involves the Grim Reaper, who after a heavy night of drinking, discovers that Dracula has stolen some souls, and he needs to get them back. To do so, he summons 2 dead warriors, Andy and Bob. Let's just say they're not smart. And he uses these two to help him get the souls back. Again, the gameplay is a twist on the bat and ball gameplay mechanics of games such as Arkanoid, going to need to bounce the ball around to destroy obstacles and defeat enemies, and at times, you'll even need to defeat some bosses. The gameplay features a lot of power-ups to obtain, and I love how you can discover secret paths and passages and routes as you play. On top of that, the game actually has a level editor. Yeah, you can even create your own levels, and it even has co-op play too. Toki Tori was a puzzle platformer that originally came out on the Game Boy Color, but years later, it got an enhanced remake for various platforms, and eventually saw an HD release pretty early on for the Switch. The goal of this game is simple. You guide Toki Tori, the yellow bird in this game, through 80 plus levels to gather up the missing eggs. Now, admittedly, he can't do much. Can't jump, for example, or attack on his own, but by using the various tools and weapons given to him in each level, he can move around and deal with enemies. In each level, you need to be very smart in how you use these weapons. If you use them without care, then you might not be able to collect all the eggs. That all said, this is a pretty good game. It's pretty fun. It will really test your puzzle solving skills, and some of these levels are real brain teasers. So if you like that stuff, then this is a no-brainer to get for just $4.99. Super Kirby Clash is a free-to-play action RPG game and a sequel to Team Kirby Clash Deluxe. Players control Kirby and his teammates by fighting against a variety of bosses in various missions. Players can choose a role for their Kirby of choice, like one that uses a sword or a hammer, or even ones that are spell-focused. And after battle, you gain experience that allows you to level up Kirby and his stats. You can also use materials that you obtain to get stronger weapons. It's a very straightforward game, but it's a lot of fun, with a good amount of quests and missions to complete and unlockables to earn. The game supports local play for up to 4 players, as well as online play. Being a free-to-play game, there is stuff that you can buy, mainly apples to unlock quests, but you can earn these pretty regularly through play, so very much so, and honestly, you never ever really need to purchase anything for this game, ever. This game is great, it's a lot of fun, and you like Kirby or multiplayer games, then this is right up your alley. Best of all, the price is free, so it's pretty hard to argue against. The entire Doom series is great, but one entry that I feel gets slept on a bit is Doom 64. Some mistakenly think it's a N64 port of the original Doom or something. Nope, it's not. It's entirely its own thing, its own entry, and it's freaking good. Set after Doom 1, Doom 2, and Final Doom storyline, the Lone Marine, aka the Doom Guy, is sent to fight off the returning demons, who have now begun to mutate into even stronger beings, and the player finds himself traveling back through hell. Simple story it may be, it's Doom, and all you really need to know is you gotta kick some ass. Doom 64 should seem familiar to those who have played the earlier entries, but now everything has new sprites, there's a new updated game engine running the show, and there has been updates to nearly all the weapons. The version on Switch is actually a remaster done by Night Dive Studios, who in recent years has done some excellent work with bringing back classic first-person shooter games from the 90s and the early 2000s into the modern era. The visuals here look better than ever, and there's support for modern control schemes. No N64 controller needed here, and it also includes the Lost Levels expansion, which adds additional missions intended to connect the older Doom games to the newer ones. For $5, I think it's fantastic, and it's a must-get for those who love boomer shooters. Many years ago, the powerful Pro Baseball series from Konami arrived in the States in the form of Power Pros, which at the time included the MLB license. The series itself is known for its super deformed characters, its fun arcade-style gameplay, and for later entries, deep stats and team building mechanics, as well as including things such as an RPG-like career mode, or even having full-fledged story modes. Here in North America, we finally received a new entry in the series, in the form of a budget-friendly release called WBSC eBASEBALL Power Pros. This game strips back things a bit to just focus on playing exhibition games and building teams with already made characters and online play. Stripped back as it might be, this is still a lot of fun. The core gameplay is there, and you can earn and unlock things through the online play mode that still has plenty playing to this day. If online play is not your thing, you can easily play games against the CPU or against others in local multiplayer. This is a pretty good sports game for just 99 cents for what you get. If you're curious, I have a whole video that goes in depth on the game, and I'll have it linked down below for you to check out later. But in the meantime, it's a game that's pretty hard to beat for just 99 cents. Super Hiking League DX is a 2D platformer where you need to climb to the top as fast as you can to reach the magic gem. Unlike traditional platformers, instead of running and jumping, you need to master the use of your rope to bungee and swing your way to the top. The elastic rope swing physics add a wonderful twist to 2D platforming, and while it might take a moment to get adjusted to it, it'll soon become second nature with the game's tight controls. While the game has a decent amount of content, with the game's story mode, arcade mode, and other modes, multiplayer is where I believe the game really shines. Trying to race to the top, while also trying to knock down your opponent at the same time, and attempt to halt their progress, leads to some good, frantic fun. It's a good arcade-style game, but also a really good multiplayer game for very cheap. I definitely recommend checking it out for just $5. I also did a full review on this one too, and I'll link the review down below. Class Force is a run-and-gun game inspired by NES games like Contra and the Mega Man games, particularly the weapons and gameplay from Contra and the visuals and stage design of the Mega Man games. It's a pretty straightforward game, but you know what? I found this to be a lot of fun for what it is. It has some nice power-ups, the gameplay is responsive, it has good music, and some fun boss fights. My only complaint about the game would be that it's a bit on the easy side. Of course, you can always select the harder difficulties to make things more exciting. For $5, I think it's worth it, and I just wanted to give it a shout out here. I love shooters, or shoot 'em ups. They are some of my favorite games to play, and one of the better, more inexpensive ones that I've discovered is a game called Road Gore. It's a 2D vertical shoot 'em up where players are tasked with lasting as long as they can through randomly generated levels and events that gradually increase in difficulty. The neat gimmick here for your ship is the bomb mechanic. As you play, the radius of where the bomb can reach will slowly grow out, and when you press the bomb button, it'll launch and destroy or damage everything in that radius. Then it'll slowly start growing out again, and you can launch another bomb. As simple as the mechanic might be, you will need to be strategic in when you use a bomb, especially at the higher levels, as it could be very well the reason whether you survive an onslaught of enemies or not. As you play, you will obtain coins that you can use to unlock permanent upgrades for your ship so you can potentially survive for longer runs, as well as unlock other backgrounds and more. It's a neat little shooter, and it's easy to pick up and play, and I found it to be quite addicting for $5. Among Us is a multiplayer game that has you killing, lying, and deceiving people, or sussing out those who are doing so, in an updated take of the classic game of Werewolf. Basically, this is a social deduction game. While the game is nowhere near as popular as it once was during the COVID pandemic, it's still a fairly popular game that still receives updates to this very day. Of course, on mobile, this game is free to play, so keep that in mind. But if you're looking to play with a controller, or you just want it on a bigger screen, then you can pick up the console version, like the Switch version, for around $5. At first glance, Vampire Survivors may not look like much, or you may wonder why in the hell the game got so popular in the first place, especially with its simplistic graphics. But once you give it a go, you'll realize how addicting this game can be. It is a shoot-'em-up style game, with roguelike elements, as you're playing as a character trying to survive against the endless hordes of monsters and enemies. As you play, you'll unlock additional characters, weapons, and more for future playthroughs. It's a very straightforward game that is kinda hard to explain sometimes, but it just seems to scratch some kind of itch. Maybe it's the fact that you're able to blast away thousands of enemies at a time? Well, that may actually be it. It also helps that there's lots of unlockables to earn, as well as tons of ways to build your character. That helps to fuel the need for players to keep coming back to it. It's worth checking out for just $5. The Suika game, or Watermelon game, is another one that at first glance, you may wonder why in the blue hell did this game ever get so popular, but as someone who thought the very same, after playing it, yeah, I definitely get the appeal. It is a very chill and casual game that looks incredibly simple to play, but don't let it fool ya. Trying to make those fruits fit in the best way possible without having them overflow out of the container can be a challenge. You gotta work with the physics of the fruit, and be mindful when they do merge, as they tend to pop and push other fruits out of the way when they do so. Its simplicity, yet addictive gameplay, is pretty much on par with something like the puzzle game of Tetris. It is deceptively simple, but the gameplay will keep you addicted as you aim to get a new high score. It's super cheap to get, it's like $3 on the eShop, so if you like puzzle games, then honestly, this is a no-brainer to get. You'll like this one. F-Zero 99 takes the classic Super Nintendo game and morphs it into a 99-player Battle Royale-style racing game, which is something I never knew I wanted or needed, but something that I'm glad Nintendo did. This is a really fun game. In each track, you race against 98 other players or modified versions of classic F-Zero tracks. And along with aiming for a high placement, you gotta survive too. Players will try to take you out by bumping into you or sending you into walls, and likewise, you can do the same to other players. As racers bump into each other, they will drop super sparks, which others can pick up. When a player's spark meter is full, a player can, while pressing the boost button, get access to a skyway above a track, allowing you to avoid hazards, as well as provide a shortcut which potentially can help you climb higher in the ranks on a track. It's a cool feature for the game that adds quite a bit of strategy to the racing gameplay. Since its launch, Nintendo has really fleshed out the game with tons of free updates that have added more tracks, more modes, and even stuff for private lobbies, as well as a ton of events. While you do need a Nintendo Switch Online subscription to take advantage of it, if you do have the subscription to the service and have yet to play it, then I really encourage you to rectify that and give this a download. It's not going to cost you anything more than what you're already paying, and it's pretty freaking good. And there you go, lots of cheap games on the eShop, but also ones that I think are worthy of your time and good additions to your digital library. While I've covered many sales, this time I wanted to have something a little bit more permanent, something that you could go back to and reference, just in case you needed some new ideas or a new game to play. Hopefully this helps you out. Let me know in the comments down below if it has, as well as let me know if there's any cheap games that you have come across that you think others need to know about. While I do a lot of game suggestions here on the channel, I'm always on the prowl for new games to play too, and you might know of a gem that maybe I haven't played yet. So yeah, feel free to sound off in the comments. But with that said, that is all from me today. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll catch ya on the next video.